A Christian view of truth and knowledge. One objective of a class on critical thinking should be gaining the ability to recognize and evaluate truth claims in order to add to your store of true beliefs and decrease the number of your false beliefs. Nowadays, there is rampant confusion about how belief, knowledge, faith, and truth relate to each other. Oddly, many people even deny that there is such a thing as truth. The current presentation is a brief explanation of these concepts. I once heard someone jokingly define faith as what you see there, believing something you know isn't true. I think that originally came from Mark Twain. Sounds like him. Regrettably, this is how much of the world views Christian faith, a wishful thinking or a blind leap. But there are many things we put our faith in: medicines, banks, firefighters, teachers. Clearly, we think we have good reasons to do that. So, what is biblical faith? Well, I like that first definition. Faith is living according to what you have good reason to believe is true. It's not a dead faith that just holds mere beliefs, and it's not a blind faith that doesn't have reasons for it. And this is especially when we talk about faith about God. You know, Jesus didn't ask people to follow him for no good reason. He had the endorsement of John the Baptist, first of all. And then he offered evidence of his spiritual authority by doing miracles. Furthermore, mere belief does not qualify as biblical faith. James, of course, tells us that the demons believe true things about God and tremble. So faith in God means to actively trust him. And also, you may be surprised that certainty is not required. So here's an illustration. It doesn't matter that you are afraid to walk out onto the middle of a frozen pond if the ice is a foot thick. However, all the confidence in the world will do you no good if the ice is only half an inch thick. So it all depends on what you have your faith in. But then, to continue the metaphor, you actually have to get out onto the ice. So, the last bullet point there is, the thing that matters is the trustworthiness of the object, plus my obedience. We can have doubts. It's not often that we have 100% certainty about anything, but I think we need to have some good reasons and then move forward. Here's another illustration: an airplane. Suppose you know everything about how this airplane works: its aerodynamics, its engines, its controls, the physics of flight, but you never actually get on the plane. It does you no good. We'll call that dead faith. On the other hand, you may climb aboard anything that has wings and hope for the best. We'll call that blind faith. You might get lucky and happen to stumble onto something good, but neither blind faith nor dead faith are what we see in Scripture as biblical faith. Your instructor has defined biblical faith for you, and please memorize this. It is acting according to what you have good reasons to believe is true. Technically, and since this is a class in critical thinking, I guess we have to get technical a little bit. 3 aspects of faith, with Latin words and everything, so enjoy. Notitia, I think that's how you spell it. So awareness of the evidence. You notice that. Assensus, you assent to it. You acknowledge the truth based on that evidence. So you're aware of the evidence, you say, yeah, it's true. And fiducia is commitment to or reliance on what one believes to be true. So that's the key point there. Commitment to or reliance. That's trusting, active trust. All right, knowledge. So that we talked a little bit about faith there. Have you ever heard someone say, I believe this, but I don't think it's true? No. When you say you believe something, you mean that you actually do think it's true. Now, what about when you claim to know something? If your belief is true and has adequate justification, we call that knowledge. Justified true belief is the technical term for it that philosophers use. Suppose I say, I believe the next card you turn over will be the King of Spades, and it just so happens that when you turn that card over, I'm correct. Did I demonstrate knowledge? I don't think so. Not normally. I mean, if you had a regular deck and were turning things over, that'd be a lucky guess. However, if I gave you a trick deck of cards to use in which all of the cards were kings of spades, then I could claim to know the identity of the card you turn over. So, mere belief is not knowledge. I believe many things that aren't true. If I knew which ones they were, I'd discard those beliefs. But I probably believe some things that aren't true. I don't know them. I may think that I know them, but I don't. So knowledge, justified true belief. Justified. That means I have good reasons for it. And that's a good little question there. Is spiritual knowledge possible? Now, the world says no. And we'll find out why in a moment. They say spiritual knowledge is not possible. Of course, Jesus claimed to have spiritual knowledge. He had beliefs that were true and that were justified. Now, knowledge is also an equivocal term because in the Bible, to know something often means to experience something. And when God has foreknowledge of something, it doesn't mean that he just knows about it beforehand, like, his omniscience. But often, or maybe usually, the Bible uses that to talk about God having an experience with, or having more intimate knowledge of someone or something beforehand. So here's a fancy word. You paid money to get into this class, and here's the payoff. Epistemology. Use that on your friends and see what they have to say. Epistemology has to do with how we know things. Study of how we know things. So we acquire beliefs from many different sources, sometimes by our own senses. However, a great many of my beliefs are held because somebody else told me something. An authority figure. Okay? When that happens, I need to evaluate the source. Is it trustworthy? Is it likely that this person knows what they're talking about? Or the reference article or library book or whatever. I also need to see what reasons are offered to support the claim. When we talk about informal fallacies, we'll encounter the fallacy of the expert witness. That just because somebody has a fancy degree in something doesn't mean that they're correct, and they need to give you their reasons for something. So, epistemology has to do with how we know things. God is an authority, and he has revealed certain things to us that we could not have known otherwise. And he's a legitimate authority. But on what basis are we justified in believing that I have the revelation from God? I think that's a valid question. Now, some people don't think that we can know anything for sure. They say that no reasons are adequate to justify any knowledge claim. Why would they say that? Well, they point out that your senses can deceive you, that people can be misinformed. Optical illusions are an example of that, your senses deceiving you. We all have experienced of being mistaken about something. It seems that just about everything can be doubted. I may only be dreaming after all. The philosopher and mathematician René Descartes wondered if there was anything that could be known for sure. What do you think about those statements that I have on the screen? How do we know that George Washington was the first U.S. president? Is it possible that that's false? Is it possible that my belief about my wife loving me is false? Is it possible that you are not taking a class at Horizon College, San Diego? Is it? Well, you get the idea. Well, let's see what René Descartes had to say about it. Well, he concluded that there was one fact, at least one fact, that it was impossible for him to doubt: his own existence. For, in order to doubt his existence, he must exist to do the doubting. Got that? Okay, and he summed it up in the Latin phrase, cogito ergo sum. So we're getting more Latin here. And that means I think, therefore I am. Very famous phrase. Okay, I doubt, therefore I am. I think, therefore I exist. That leaves just about everything else that can be doubted, in his view. And those who advocate such a position of doubting everything are called radical skeptics. They are skeptical of all knowledge claims, except, of course, their own skepticism. Did you see that? They are making a dogmatic claim that all knowledge should be doubted. So they're not doubting their own skepticism, and that is a problem with their position. It's a little bit circular. And here's the key thing to recognize. Just because it is possible to be mistaken about something doesn't mean it is reasonable to believe that you are, in fact, mistaken. Okay? Just because it may be possible that my brain is plugged into the matrix, that doesn't mean it is still reasonable to believe that is the case. I think I have a couple more things to say about this. The radical skeptic claims that it is impossible to know anything about reality because all we really have to go on are our sense experiences, which have been shown to not be reliable. So examples of that are optical illusions, false memories, misperceptions. However, the fact that we are aware there are difficulties with always trusting our sense experience shows that we have at least some accurate access to reality in order to make that assessment. In other words, how can I judge some sense experience to be mistaken unless there is an accurate standard by which to evaluate it? Understand that? The problem with radical skepticism is that it presumes an accurate grasp of reality on some level in order to make the claim that an accurate grasp of reality is not possible. The claim defeats itself.